This week, 1,000 little cuts from all over as the rebels and Union continue to push and pull to get a slight advantage. However, there's more to this war than skirmishing. Two critical gubernatorial elections in the central swing states of Ohio and Pennsylvania, where we see a familiar but unwelcoming face. Then there's the politics of the armies, where presidents of both combatant states press their respective generals. But who will move first? So many questions I must answer in such a short week. This week's first action is the return of rebel writer General Joseph Weir, who has completed his campaign of carnage. He has suffered many losses and cannot trounce the Federal equestrians at any engagement. But the destruction of Union supply lines and the resulting panic is success enough for Wheeler. This isn't the only news for the rebels out west. The besieging army of Tennessee under General Braxton Bragg gets a visitor in President Jefferson Davis. After the summer's defeats and the Pyrrhic victory at Chickamauga, the president of the secessionist states wishes to shore up support from the only base he needs, the army. Though this isn't as peaceful as it seems, the Confederate commander-in-chief receives a letter from Bragg's corps individual commanders asking for their superior's replacement. General James Longstreet had written to the Secretary of War, and General Nathan Bedford Forrest refused to serve under Bragg. No one likes him except Jeff Davis. Davis isn't there to replace the man, but to cement his control. On the 13th, Davis permitted General D.H. Hill's removal, who has been a nuisance to Bragg and Lee, and with the CSA's two most prominent military leaders against him, he is released from command and reverts to a major general. Davis then speaks against Bragg's subordinates for their apparent attempted mutiny. On the 14th, he gives an ominous speech to the army of Bragg, asking them to do the duty of their Revolution fathers, but the men are not roused. And his attempt to fix the command structure by placing Lieutenant General John Pemberton fails, as his absolute failure at Vicksburg lowered morale. Instead, the corps turns to General Hardee, who had earlier left the army because of his disdain for Bragg. The Army of Tennessee is in a terrible shape, moving away from southern Tennessee to eastern Tennessee. We're in a small action on the 10th at Blue Springs near Knoxville. Major General Ambrose Burnside repulses an assault by General John S. Williams and his cavalry. By pursuing them, he can destroy any chance of them threatening his flanks again. On the 11th, a similar thing happens in Coolerville, West Tennessee, where a daring rebel cavalry assault almost captures Major General William T. Sherman, but are also repulsed. There's also a tiny engagement at Henderson Mill, Tennessee. Now for a battle I will actually cover in detail, the Battle of Marshall, Missouri. Call it bias for Missouri, but I think this one is far more important than the past ones. The traitor they call Joseph O. Shelby has returned to his home of the Show Me State to show the Union what terror he can accomplish. So far, he's been successful. But he hasn't gone uncontested, and after some setbacks, he's been pinned in the small town of Marshall. In his front are around 1,000 men under Union officer Lazar and 1,800 men of General Brown behind him. Shelby tries to break through Lazar's line, throwing all but 200 men as a rear guard at the Union's battle line. These 200 men under Shanks, great name, are soon hit by artillery from behind as Brown arrives. He sends half of his force against Shanks, who has a good defensive ground and can hold. But Brown sends another column of men to flank Shelby's main force. Pressure can't be sustained for long, and Shelby prepares his men to withdraw. But a daring Union cavalry commander, on his own initiative, charges into the fleeing mass of gray men and successfully cuts them in two. The rebels flee to Arkansas. But this battlefield tragedy has yet to be told. Mr. McCafferty had some very choice piece of bacon. He was very anxious should not be captured or plundered by either side. His house was placed on blocks without any underpinning. He thought to save his bacon by hiding it under the house. His neighbor, Jim McCon, had a pack of hounds, lean, lank, and ravenously hungry. Fighting at the noise of the battle, the thunder of the captains and the shouting, these hounds had slunk under McCafferty's house and lay cowering right where he proposed to hide his meat. As he flung it under piece by piece, the dog seizing gleefully carried it away to a place of safety, where it was devoured. McCafferty, strange to say, was laughed at by those of his neighbors who had no meat of their own to hide, as well as those who had on account of his mishap. I just love the wackier side of this war. Then on the 12th, we get a letter from Lincoln to Rosecrans. Major General Rosecrans, Washington, D.C., Chattanooga, Tennessee, October 12th, 8:35 a.m., 1863. As I understand, Burnside is menaced from the east, so it cannot go to you without surrendering East Tennessee. I now think the enemy will not attack Chattanooga. I think you have to look out for his making a concentrated drive at Burnside. You and Burnside now have him by the throat. You must break your hold of English. Therefore, think you better to try to hold the river up to Kingston, leaving Burnside towards above there. Sherman is coming to you, though gaps in the telegraph prevent our knowing how far he is advanced. Hanover will so support you on the west and northwest as enable you to look to east and
northeast. It's not an order. Ohio will give his views. A. Lincoln.
Well, it's not an order, it's a clear direction to the stagnant defender of Chattanooga. Rosecrans is not liked by the papers, nor is he any longer pleasing to the commander-in-chief. If he wants job security, he will have to do something. On the 13th, the cousin of Stonewall Jackson, not even worth naming, leads a raiding party of 800 men to attack a fort in West Virginia. On the 13th, the cousin of Stonewall Jackson, not worth naming, leads a raiding party of 800 men to attack a fort in West Virginia. He's beaten back, ensuring his legacy as a footnote in Thomas's family tree. Now it's election time. First up is Pennsylvania, where incumbent Republican Governor Andrew G. Curtin wins by only 15,000 votes in a close election. This is a surprise, as in last year's House elections and the January Senate election, Democrats took the state. Continual hold over the state executive by an ally of Lincoln is a blessing, especially after the importance of the state in the Battle of Gettysburg and its considerable number of regiments. Then there's the Ohio election, and oh, by God, is it a lot. The incumbent governor, David Todd, is not up for re-election, as the National Union ticket, the alliance of war Democrats and Republicans, found him ineffective, instead nominating John Bragg, who has been away from politics for decades but is known across the state for his fiery speeches defending abolition. Who is his opponent? Clement Vallandigham. Why can't he just leave the story? We haven't heard from that man since his electoral defeat. How has he been doing? Well, in April 1863, Ambrose Burnside issued Order No. 38, which made the habit of declaring sympathies for the enemy punishable, which got its authority from the suspension of habeas corpus, which was allowed. Vallandigham found this to be another act of tyranny by King Lincoln, which he publicly expressed in a speech in early May. Unsurprisingly, he got arrested and was tried in a military court. Vallandigham only called one witness to his defense, Representative Samuel S. Cox, another Copperhead, which is probably the worst thing he could have done. After some legal back and forth, his arrest is upheld, and he's deported to the Confederacy, which Lincoln did to ensure he wouldn't become a martyr. He is sent to the rebels on the 19th, where he tells them,
I am a citizen of Ohio and of the United States. I am here within your lines by force and against my will. I therefore surrender myself to you as a prisoner of war.
You know, I don't like the man, but I will give him. That's a pretty cool thing to say. Instead of being treated like a hero in the CSA, he's considered an enemy alien and put under house arrest. But this house arrest is like the king's. Visitors come and talk with him, and it's quite enjoyable. One topic of conversation was the upcoming Gettysburg campaign. Well, upcoming for the time, which Vallandigham worried would ruin the election of 1864 with a Confederate invasion of the North. He flees to Canada on a blockade runner via Bermuda, because this weird story needs a tropical holiday. Maybe I should take one. He ends up in Ontario, where he decides to run for governor in absentia. On the 11th of June, the Democrats of Ohio passed him in a landslide vote of 411 to 11, making Vallandigham their candidate. On the 29th, Lincoln offered to rescind his deportation in exchange for the support of Ohio elected officials, but the Ohio Democrats refused his offer. Vallandigham's campaign is focused on his treatment. In fact, one of his speeches asked,
Shall there be free speech, a free press, peaceable assemblages of the people, and a free ballot any longer in Ohio?
The question is left to the people via a free ballot, where they overwhelmingly tell Vallandigham to piss off, with 288,374 to 187,492 against him. Vallandigham rebuked, and the Democrats' chances in 1864 are damaged as they tie themselves to Vallandigham's extremism. Then we shall turn to the east, where Jeb Stuart takes on the Army of the Potomac. Stuart's cavalry is reconnoitering around the town of Auburn, Virginia. When they discover a small cavalry detachment guarding a Union flank, they charge in hopes of taking advantage of this. The arrival of two federal corps spelled disaster for their charge. Men of Stuart are soon encircled, and on the 14th, Ewell's corps is sent to break them out. Stuart's corps flee with Ewell's diversion, but soon the Army of Northern Virginia has engaged in battle. Lieutenant General Ambrose P. Hill, in support of Ewell, sends General Henry Heth to take his division and charge the 2nd Corps. Gouverneur K. Warren moves his corps behind the Orange and Alexandria Railroad, which is a strong position, allowing for an ambush of two of Heth's brigades. They capture a battery of Confederate cannons. Hill desperately tries to bring his numbers to bear, outnumbering Warren 2-1, but nothing is successful. Hill is forced to fall back, suffering 1,280 casualties to 540 inflicted. A failure of Hill ruins his reputation, with Lee ordering him to bury his dead and never speak of this battle again. It's clear that Longstreet is the only subordinate we can still trust. And he's gone. This week's last thing is something new and possibly terrifying. A submarine. There's never been a successful submarine. The first one, the USS Turtle, all the way back in the Revolutionary War, failed in its one mission. But the idea of an undetectable vessel, it's too tempting. Mr. Hunley, a Confederate, has been working on his own kind of submarine named the Pioneer, which sank once during testing. After some fixes so impressed General P.G.T. Beauregard, it was acquired into the Confederate Navy. And the 15th is the day of its second test. Hunley himself leads his namesake ship in the test. All 8 crew die in the trial, but this doesn't stop PGT, who just salvages it, moves the bodies, and continues work on it. Finally, there's Sickles, and he meets his corps in Virginia. Joseph Hopkins Twitchell, chaplain of the 71st New York, recalls the events.
He was looking magnificently and showed no signs since missing the leg of his misfortune. They had been expecting him for 2 days, and the boys were all primed to give him a rousing welcome.
Other historians noted that officers and men prepared themselves for Sickles better than they would anyone else, and when Sickles finally came,
the uproar commenced. It was thunderous. Enthusiasm got excitement, and excitement wilderness. The uproar commenced. It was thunderous. Enthusiasm begot excitement, and excitement wildness. It was soul-stirring, and not a little affecting. I know some officers wept.
Sickles also wept, for the joy of seeing his men got to him. The reunion was too emotional for even the battle-hardened veterans of the war. That's where the week ends, and it's almost too much to speak about or adequately summarize. I will tell you one thing, though. These half measures by the rebels are failing. From the 2 raids to the battles in Virginia, when not exerting full force, they die. There is to be a Southern victory, to save this year, for them. It will have to be a full one, holding nothing back. Not that there is much left to hold. I'll see you next week. Hi, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here. With things changing from my set to my time, I'm thinking of changing up how I do the channel. I'm thinking of no longer sitting so far away from the camera, but instead right here, getting the emotion more quickly. It's just a thought coming around. I'm planning on trying it out, but I would just like to know what you guys think. I hope to see you next week.